What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor season 46, the premiere. So exciting. So, my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and this premiere, I feel like it was a good thing that this was a longer premiere. I feel like it really set us up well for the rest of the season. We got to see so much of the different tribe dynamics. I love it.
I'm excited for 2 hours this week, 2 hours, the second episode. Then we go to the 90-minute episodes. Very exciting. We got a lot of information this episode, so hopefully that continues throughout the season. Although, like we said, these longer episodes, it's sort of difficult to watch them 2 times when they are a tad bit longer. However, overall, I thought it was a fine premiere. For me, it was nothing too special.
Yeah, I feel like it was kind of a standard premiere. I felt like I knew who was going home basically from the get go. So I think there could have been more stakes in that sense, but like it was okay. I think one thing that I did see that was interesting is that this has been the most balanced premiere, like confessional screen time wise, in the new
Mm.
era, because everyone got to speak at least once, and then the person who spoke the least, who was Liz, still got over 20 seconds of confessional time, which probably doesn't sound like a lot when you think about a 2 hour premiere, but apparently that's more than any other lowest ranking confessional count person. So just a fun little fact.
That's really interesting. I feel like preseason, doing like the cast assessment, looking at all of the preseason information, people probably wouldn't have guessed that Jelinski would be the first boot just based off of first impressions. I feel like he's not your stereotypical first boot, especially on a six-person tribe, as we've seen in the new era for the six-person tribe. You're maybe more likely to vote out the weakest player physically from the tribe, whether that be a man or a woman. Mostly, like, weaker people are getting voted out early, presumed weak people because they want to keep the tribe strong to win challenges. So honestly, I feel like this makes Jelinski's elimination vote out here a little bit more awkward. Like, sucks for him because he was voted out based on things that he can change, which would be that attitude, him quitting in multiple facets of the premiere, compared to being the weakest physically, which might be a little bit harder to change. You can't change your body type. Maybe you go work out before Survivor, but if you're small or other things, that's a little bit harder to change.
Yeah, I think it's interesting though too because like it is something that you can change. Some people have been saying that it sounds like Jelinski is angling to come back again already. So maybe that bodes well for like if it's something that you can change in the future, maybe you come back on Survivor, but maybe not.
And maybe like the quitting attitude, maybe it is part of his age because he is only like 22 years old. So that could be a part of it. Maybe he should have been on Millennials versus Gen X. That would have been interesting. So it's like, oh, do all of the Millennials just get stuff handed to them? So I guess you could do a Gen Z version where you just say the participation trophies.
Yeah, I think I don't want to blame it on his age because I feel like part of it is just he had expectations for what Survivor would be like, and those expectations didn't line up. I think it's a lot of people say they'll be one way when they get on the island, and then when they actually get on the island, that's not the way that they behave. I think we kind of see the same thing with Jess, where like she had something come up that she really didn't expect, where she was like, I don't know why I can't sleep, and that's really messing me up. So it's one of those things where you never know how it's going to be until you're there. And for Jelinski, he kept coming up against things that he quit or didn't know how to navigate.
True. It would be interesting to know if he has that same kind of personality or like thought process in real life in things that he does. But it also doesn't seem like that's the case because in his preseason stuff, he talks about like, oh, the ballet scholarship, all of these other random things that he does. So it is very interesting there. It is funny because in the commercial, Jeff is like, oh, if you think you would do differently, or you don't know how hard it is until you're actually out here. Come apply for Survivor.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where even if like you're not planning to go on Survivor, you can still say like, "Hey, that was kind of a dumb move." Like it doesn't take a genius to say that knowingly giving up your vote is kind of silly.
So we get to this opening start of the premiere episode. Tevin gets a very cool opening monologue as well as montage of all of the other players when he's talking at the beginning about Survivor. So that's very cool. Obviously, we've seen throughout this episode, Tevin is a very good speaker. He gets a lot of screen time and confessional time. But I do wonder, like, okay, opening out the season, does this bode well for Tevin's longevity in the game?
I think it's interesting because it's one of those things where people are like, are they overexposing Tevin because he's actually the winner? And we know that a winner would never be this over edited in the first episode. Like, people are playing mind games trying to figure out where Tevin lands as far as like where he's going home in the boot order. And I just think that's so funny. People are like twisting themselves in knots trying to play 5D chess about Survivor editing.
So everyone gets on the boats, they get to the beach, and then Jeff says that the seas were a little bit rough. People threw up on that boat ride. I would throw up. I'm like, I can't. Sometimes cars get very car sick. On a boat like this, I would definitely be so seasick and feel like crap. I would like, oh, that would be so torture being on a rocking boat like that.
Yeah, I feel like it's not a great way to start because it seems like a lot of people got sick. So you wouldn't want that to be your first impression, but can't really help it.
Yeah, I'd be like, "Oh, I gotta keep in the vomit. It can't be shown as weak or like seasick to these people," and then you would just be tortured.
Yeah.
But I thought Jeff's speech in this opening start of the game was very interesting. He says, "Oh, everyone is excited. You all have a blank slate right now. You all believe that you can win this game. Like nothing has happened yet. Everyone here is here to play, is here to win. Everyone hopefully thinks they can win the game." I'm like, dang, yeah, that is true. And that is personally why I like the premiere better than the finale. In the premiere, nothing is set in stone yet. They don't know, don't have any alliances yet. When we get to the finale, then it's like, okay, it's probably this one person winning the game if they get to the end. And I just thought his speech here was very true.
I also thought it was kind of funny though, because Jeff was like, most of you are wrong. There's only gonna be one winner. So I was like, way to take everyone down a peg, Jeff, because he was like, you're all nodding, but only one of you is right when saying that you're gonna be, the winner of Survivor 46. So he was savage.
Yeah, Sassy Jeff is back apparently, but other things in Survivor US are not back. But we get to this first challenge. You have to crawl under the muddy net, get heavy puzzle pieces, do a puzzle, and then get a flint with a pole in order to win the tribe's supplies. First place, second place gets to choose between whether they want to do the sweat or savvy challenge. So this was a fun challenge for me. I liked how Randon put the entire buff over his face when he crawled through the mud so that after you get through the mud part, you just take the buff off and you could see, because we saw other people go through and they're like, I can't see. I've got mud in my eyes and nose after they've crawled through that. So I was like, okay, that's pretty smart. I like that strategy.
Yeah, I like it whenever players use what they have in kind of creative ways, just because that makes the game more interesting.
So Orange wins first place. After Orange wins, Jelinski goes over and studies Orange's puzzle. On the rewatch, I was thinking, maybe this is the first sign of what is to come, that he, cheating obviously is allowed. Looking at the other people's puzzles is allowed. So it is interesting. Day one, he's going over, but alas, even though he was looking at their puzzle, it's too late because green wins second and then purple is last place.
Wah, wah, wah. Yeah, I feel like this was a pretty basic first challenge. There wasn't anything that difficult. The puzzle had big pieces, but I don't think it was a particularly hard puzzle. So I think this was mostly for the teams to kind of test out how they work together, figure out who everyone is. and not necessarily meant to be super difficult.
I agree. There is no like choice in this challenge that we've seen in some of the new era seasons first challenge. Like, okay, you have to make some kind of choice for yourself versus the tribe. It has a risk involved. Nothing like that here. So, yeah, I agree. Pretty standard challenge where you get to see, okay, who is stronger, who might be weaker, who's good at puzzles, who can help me in these challenges on my team, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, green as second place, they want to do savvy since they thought their puzzle prowess would follow through, which means purple team they get sweat by default. When on the purple team, we see that Jelinski offers to do sweat, says, I can do it. Q also volunteers to do the sweat challenge, makes the choice easy for picking the two people. No one else had to like fight or awkwardly stand there or raise their hands. Second watch, I'm like, maybe this is awkward second sign. He offers to do something and then isn't able to follow through. Although the buckets, I was like, dang, they're so small. And then when it's revealed that they have holes in them, I was like, this is sort of funny because that sucks.
Yeah, there was a lot of, I guess, online chatter about the whole sweat versus savvy, the bucket things, people suggesting different strategies. Apparently, Jelinski said they were told the only thing they were allowed to do with the buckets was plug the holes with their fingers. Like,
Mm.
a lot of people suggested, like, putting the two buckets inside of each other and then twisting it so, like, the holes weren't lined up. If you use your buff could, like, plug some of the holes in the buckets so that more of the holes were plugged. Apparently, they were told they could only use their fingers to plug the holes. And I don't know about you, but I feel like this kind of defeats the purpose of the sweat challenge. Because to me, the sweat challenge was supposed to be like, yeah, it'll be a hard work, but it's still doable. And this very much did not seem doable. Like apparently the dream team was able to do it, but I question that. It seems like this was more difficult than it should have been.
Yeah, how many hours did the dream team do it in? Because that was my question. Like, did they complete it? And if so, it in what time?
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It just feels bad, man. I feel like the Savvy Challenge, the Green Tribe, like almost got there, but I feel like they were never going to finish the Sweat Challenge. There was no way.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Like, it was a very difficult challenge. Q, in his opening segment, he says that he hates losing. He played football at high levels. And so, from this, I was like, okay, maybe it's looking back a bad read from Jelinski saying that they should quit because, sort of like in Shipwheel Island, maybe you have the opportunity and obviously when you're walking there you should be talking to each other to potentially gain trust, gain an alliance member, but maybe you get to know each other some there, and maybe it's a bad read from Jelinski if he's getting to know Q while they're suffering walking back up and down the beach here, that you should have realized that Q is a hard worker, whether Q talked about his real life or not, or much of his background. Just like Q in the episode, we saw a few clips of Q saying, like, no, we need to keep pushing. If you quit, I've lost. Like, we can't do, like, not do this. We've got to do this and keep pushing through. So, based off of like those comments alone, and then if they talked about real life, his athletic background, his potential real estate background, I feel like you might get the vibes that Q is someone that really prides himself in what he's able to accomplish and like putting hard work into your tasks. So maybe not realizing that could be a bad read from Jelinski.
Yeah, and I think even just on the surface level, Q is like trying to like, gas Jelinski up and
Mhm.
like, you can do this. Like, I know you've done hard things before. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, we can do this. So I feel like even if you're not sure about your ability to do this, I feel like there's better ways to go about it than just being like, we're never going to get this done. Because it's kind of like, guy just spent the last hour, however long, telling you like, yeah, we can do this, and you're just like, no, I can't do this. So
It's yeah, like I don't think it's a bad idea to propose quitting the challenge if both of them are in full agreement and you have a conversation about quitting rather than just saying, yeah, I don't think I can do it, I want to bow out, and then you basically force the other person's hand to also quit, because no way one person can fill these two buckets alone in several, hours. So if you have a conversation and both people are on the same page, then I think it makes more sense to quit. Like we just talked about, this challenge seems freaking hard. The buckets are small, they have large holes in them. It seems very, very difficult. 4 hours of having your two largest, strongest tribe members walking up and down this beach is probably going to hurt you in the next day's immunity challenge. Like, it would make sense to quit this if you feasibly don't think you can do it, to save your energy for the immunity challenge.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's also something that you could have just said. Like, you could be
Mm.
like, hey, like, I think that maybe our strength would better be saved for the immunity challenge tomorrow, and then we'll get the flint back anyways. Like, I think the problem isn't necessarily that Jelinski quit the challenge. It was kind of like his attitude towards it, and then just how he behaved afterwards. Where I feel like if he had been like, Q, I really respect that you like want to win this challenge, but I think that like it would be better for us to just save our energy for tomorrow. Like, I think Q would have taken that better than Jelinski just being like, we can't do it.
I agree. I think here in Sweat vs. Savvy, and then in the trip that Jelinski goes on later in the episode, it's not necessarily the wrong choices that he made. Like we're talking about, it makes sense to quit the challenge. It's difficult, save your energy for immunity. But I think it's like his wording and his way of going about explaining his choices just makes him look like a quitter in both instances, and then sort of like a sore loser. Like, he throws the hourglass, which was a little bit funny given the hourglass rhetoric in Survivor. Like, haha, Jelinski just turned back time, he's not getting voted out today. But like, I don't know, I feel like destroying a Survivor prop sort of looks bad.
Yeah, I think that's the main problem Jelinski had throughout this episode. Like, we'll talk about the journey when we get to the journey. But again, if he had just sold it a little bit better, like, I think it would have been fine. I think really his problem is lack of social skills.
And maybe, yeah, it goes with the age and stuff like that too, but I guess we'll see. We get to the Savvy Challenge, and on this team, Ben and Charlie are the two people that volunteer. They have to cross out the words, which are numbers, on the crossword puzzle, and then they start guessing the numbers from the crossword guessing the numbers from the crossword in the digit combination in order to get the key information stuff. But they did it incorrectly when they started guessing the numbers from the crossword rather than using the letters that they didn't cross out in order to figure out the little word phrase that says dig under the like box thing. So it is interesting, especially because the clue says use all the information below to figure out what you are missing. So, yeah, I mean, stress, nerves of being on Survivor that they didn't pick out those letters, but also I feel like guessing all of those combinations, you got to think that's like impossible in the time allotted.
Yeah, I think it might just be one of those things where when you know you're on a time limit, suddenly like your brain works differently. And it's like you would have been able to do that in under 15 minutes if you didn't have a 15-minute time limit. But then again, just the stress of the situation. I feel like they were definitely closer than the other team was. But I think another thing is they were looking for numbers in the crossword when they were crossing numbers out. And so I feel like maybe to go from numbers to words like that, you have to change how your brain is working.
Mm.
Because like if I saw the letter D left over, I'd be like, oh, there's no numbers with D in it. So I guess like that's why it's left over. So
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of the thing like the where you have the color written in English, so like red for red, but the text is actually in like blue, and you have to say the color of the text and not the English word. So maybe you're saying different parts of your brain they didn't realize to look at the uncrossed out letters. It seems like Ben and Charlie genuinely failed this challenge, but I do wonder in the past, in the future, if people would throw this challenge in order to seem less smart, because the like risk isn't even that big. You go to the challenge tomorrow and you can get the flint and the supplies and stuff like that tomorrow. It's not like, oh, you're never going to get these things because you lost Sweat versus Savvy today.
Well, I think you could also say, like, oh, it wasn't that difficult of a challenge. Like, I feel like the one where they had to, like, count all of the intersecting triangles or whatever was a lot more difficult than this one where they just had leftover letters. Or if you're like, oh, we just had to cross out some letters and read some words in leftover letters, like, that's not that big of a deal. So I think, again, it's all about presentation. How do you spin it to your tribe mates? Do you spin it as, like, oh, it was this really difficult challenge, or do you spin it as like, oh, that was actually easier than all the past years? I don't know why they gave us such an easy challenge. And I think that can make a difference.
True. They probably spun it. We didn't really see much of the aftermath here, but hopefully they spun it as this was so confusing, so difficult. Hee hee. I'm not actually that good at puzzles, guys. Like, sorry, we failed you all, but we'll try to do better next time, kind of thing. And I feel like you could bring up, oh, we got 10 numbers and it's like 3-digit combination, but there's 6 different like scrolly things there, and you can try to do all of the combinations of all these numbers and just explain how difficult that would be, because they thought they had to guess the correct combination based off of all the numbers they had.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think, again, it's not that big of a deal for them. I feel like that's one of the things about the shortened timeline where, like, maybe if you didn't go to the immunity challenge until day 3 and you had to, like, go over a day without having a machete, without having flint, like, that would be worse. But, like, when it's just the next day, like, you'll survive 24 hours without these things.
Maybe they got to up the stakes. If you don't win it in Sweat versus Savvy, you're never getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Then people would not quit their part of the challenge. So on Green Team, we see Tim and Maria bond over being parents. I thought this was very interesting because in the cast assessment, I said Maria might have trouble because she's the one of the oldest people and there's not that many parents on the team. So it was cool. Okay, great. You bonded over being parents. This is good for you. And then it was also funny because I said, oh, Tim bringing up his wife is pretty cute. And then Alyssa is talking about how wife lovers get a bad rhetoric recently.
Well, I also said that there were more parents on the season than you were giving them credit for. Mm-hmm. And was I right? Yes, I was.
Which was interesting with the wife lover thing because we do see the women bonding here. Mariah, Maria, and Jem. They want to bring in Charlie as their 4th to get the numbers, which is very smart. And they dub themselves potentially Charlie's Angels. Hee hee. And then Tim realizes that the women are working together, so the guys got to work together. And then he says the line, I have a wife, I have a grandma, I know how they operate. The women always take out the guys. We got to take a girl out. And I was like, oh, okay.
I also think it's so funny because it's like, in what universe is he operating where like the women always work together and take guys out? Like, I feel like people in like Survivor, watching Survivor, like remember the really iconic moments more than they remember like the average season. So they remember like, oh, the Black Widow Brigade convincing Eric not to give up his individual immunity, when it's like, I feel like that is the last time there was like a successful women's alliance that took out a guy. Like, it's not something that happens all the time. Like, I feel like we talk about this every season where the idea of a women's alliance is floated and then it never really follows through. So for him to be that worried about it, and then for him also to be like, I know women, so I know everything about women, was just like, ooh, a little cringe.
It just reminded me of your wife lovers comment, and I was like, "Oof, this is a bad line for Tim." This is just like, yeah, look at the stats of Survivor and then just saying, "Just because you have a wife, you know it?" I don't know. I was like, "This is whack." And then Flynn Masters and I were texting during the episode, and Flynn was like, WTF, when do the women always take out the guys? So it is people that do realize that this is just a wacky thing to say.
Yeah, the whole thing was kind of cringe, kind of wacky. I guess since this tribe didn't go to tribal council, we didn't really get to see how the alliances would actually shake out. But I'm interested to see like where Charlie will go. So, because that'll kind of affect how the tribe moves forward.
True. On this tribe, Ben is here. I don't know. I low key find him a little bit annoying on television. He just has music references in every single line that he says. And it was funny when someone asked him what his interests are, he said guitar. And I was like, "Oh, this is reminding me of Barbie's Ken vibes." But then we see everyone else on the tribe saying, "We love Ben. He's the life of the party. He's the best person on this tribe. He makes the tribe because of his energy."
Well, I think it's interesting because, like, I think we talked about this also, where like someone's energy coming across a screen is going to be very different from their energy, like in the real world. Like we talked about Cody and how, like, across the screen, it seemed like he was a little much, but people really loved him. And I feel like Ben might be the same way, where like he might seem a little much across the screen, but like in reality, he's lovely. And then also, I think people's opinions day one and people's opinions day 20 might be different. Like maybe the energy that you found really exciting and helpful on day one, by day 20, you're just like, Ben, shut up. So I think like it could just be like a first impression type thing. So I'm curious to see moving forward where he ends up.
True, because it does seem like he maybe be on the outs of this tribe. Him and Tim are maybe on the outs. It would be also interesting to see where Maria goes on this tribe, because Maria could maybe go with Tim as a parents thing, or even if the women do work together and bring in Charlie, maybe they target Ben because Maria wants to protect Tim as a parent. So, yeah, I could see, even if they do really love Ben, it would be up to Maria to save Tim, because if they do like Ben, they probably want to vote Tim first.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really seem like Maria was interested in working with Tim, because I feel like other than like their first conversation, we never really saw them talking to each other. So it wasn't like she was super close with Tim. So I feel like if it is between like Tim and Ben to go home, she might just be like, "Yeah, sure, we can cut Tim."
Yeah, might be just easier to let your guy go than to put up a big fight and piss some other people off. Or the other women might be like, side eye question mark. Why would Maria fight so hard for Tim?
Exactly. And I feel like you don't want to stick your neck that far out, especially knowing what we as the viewers know, that Tim is kind of ready to cut one of the women. It's kind of like, would you do that for Tim, even if Tim might not do the same for you?
Nope. So I think Tim and Ben on the chopping block to go from green. Speaking of Ben's vibes, I would sort of be on the same page as Hunter when we go to the orange team, where Hunter has some gripes about the camp songs because he too was also a camp counselor. And a lot of people on orange are very high energy. I feel like for me in this kind of situation, I would low key be stressed out because they're also high energy. That more introverted, I would be very anxious here.
Yeah, I feel Hunter so bad because I used to be a camp counselor as well, and we would have to sing the songs on the buses, and like every day, I would get home and I would be like, I never want to hear that song again, and then the next day I would have to get up and hear that song again. So I'm definitely with him. I thought it was kind of funny though, because like in the like video feed of them, Like everyone else is like jamming, having a good time, and then Hunter is kind of like lurking in the background. So I feel like it was good that he had that moment with Tevin later where he was like, yeah, like I'm having like a hard time matching everyone's energy, but like I want to be here. So because I feel like if you had just continued kind of being awkward and uncomfortable in the background, then maybe you like end up being voted out just because you're not messing or meshing. That's the word.
I agree with the camp songs. Like, I did student government growing up, and so a friend from the gym, he also did student government, and with student government, we too would have songs that we would have to sing, and it was funny because last year we were talking about the student government stuff, and he also says he hates those songs. So maybe it takes a certain kind of person to enjoy like the little songs that you have to sing as a part of a leadership position. So I thought that was funny as well. And yeah, with the Hunter Tevin, they bond over Andy Griffith. I had no idea who that was.
Neither did I.
But everyone's naming alliances this season. We've got the Andy Griffith Alliance, we've got the Charlie's Angels Alliance. So Nick Wilson brought it into fashion, and we're naming alliances.
Mm-hmm.
But also on Orange, we hear Liz. She talks about how much money she has, which was, I like Tevin said, I think this is a faux pas. This is just really weird to do on day one of Survivor. We saw it last week too on Australian Survivor when one of the contestants was talking about how their business makes 7 or 8 figures. Like, why would you talk about this? That's bad.
Yeah, in general, I feel like Liz kind of rubbed people the wrong way between talking about how much her businesses make and then also being like, I'm allergic to everything and kind of like making people feel bad for eating. Like, she was like, oh, like, you don't have to feel bad for eating, but it's kind of like if you make a point of being like, I can't eat, like, of course, everyone else is going to feel bad for you. So I feel like
Mhm.
Liz definitely is the one who's not really connecting socially with everyone else on this tribe. Because I feel like we kind of see an alliance starting to form between like Hunter, Tevin, Soda, but then and then also Soda and Venus like had their little chit chat. But I feel like Liz and Randon are definitely kind of on the outs in the Orange tribe.
Yeah, I could see Liz being a first boot off of this team. We see Tevin say he thought Venus was a princess based off of first impressions. And then Venus is like, oh, heck no. Like, I'm going to rebuke this right now and give you all the facts. Randon then says that he thinks that Venus is a Parvati type character. And I don't know. For me, I'm like, I'm low key tired of this rhetoric that just because she's a pretty young girl, that she's like Parvati and we have to vote her out because she's attractive. Like, what?
Yeah, yeah. Like I love Parvati. Everyone knows that I love Parvati, but I feel like her existence has made Survivor so much harder for women just because everyone's like, oh, is this Parvati? And it's like, bro, it's like, I don't get it because I feel like there's no other winner where people are like so like anal about the possibility that there might be another winner similar to the one previous.
And Venus takes it like a champ. She's like, yeah, I would love to be like Parvati because she's won the game. Like, thanks for giving me that compliment. So I feel like just the whole Parvati story nowadays, it doesn't really mean like, oh, Parvati, like strategic, using flirting as a strategy. Now it's just used as like, this girl is really, really attractive. So therefore she is like Parvati, and therefore we need to vote her out.
Yeah, I think it's also weird because like Parvati didn't win on her first season. Like she won on a returnee season after she'd had time to like step back and reevaluate her game. And I feel like people acting like Parvati was immediately a super threat out of the gate and like was going to win every season of Survivor she was ever going to be on. It's kind of like that's not what happened. Like you're rewriting history with the knowledge that you consider Parvati one of the best players. Like, you know,
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, people are based assumptions based on their looks every single day. Like, you can't really change what you look like.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit about Orange Tribe. We go to this boat trip for Purple. Jelinski volunteers to go. No one really fights it. He gets to go. Tevin rolls the correct die, so he gets to go. Maria wins rock, paper, scissors, so she gets to go. Jelinski here names the episode based off of his confessional, and this is like the second time maybe he calls himself a legend in the making this episode.
Yeah, that was cringe. His whole thing about insisting on referring to himself in the third person was cringe. I feel like the fact that he automatically like volunteered to go on the boat trip was kind of cringe also. Where it's like, dude, even if you do want to go, be a little more chill about it. Like, be like, oh, it would be fun to go. Don't be like, I want to go, just because like you already have a strike against you. Like, don't make it worse for yourself.
Yeah, or do like draw the biggest stick or rock, paper, scissors to at least, let someone else potentially have the chance of going, make it a little bit more fair sounding. But for this challenge, you have to attempt to persuade the holder of the torch card that you have the vote card and not the skull card. So Tevin gets the torch and then Jelinski gets the skull. Maria is the one who has to choose. And so Maria, in a confessional, says that she thinks Jelinski is lying based on her gut, but this is in confessional. So I would want to know, like, in this moment, did Maria believe Jelinski or believe Tevin more? Like, obviously, after the fact, when you're filming these confessionals, you can say whatever you want because that happened after she already knew Jelinski was the wrong answer to pick and Tevin was the truth teller. So I'd want to know, really, was her gut telling her the right thing or did she make it up after the fact?
Yeah, I also just feel like this game is kind of inherently unfair. Because it's like, if you have the skull card, you're basically screwed. Like, there's different stakes for every person because it's like the torch person is the one who's charged with like either losing their vote or not. And it's like, you're the skull card and you make the person who has the torch card pick you, then they're pissed off at you. And it's like,
I agree. I think getting the skull is a lose-lose because, like what you're saying, either you win your vote, which is a win for you, but you've outed yourself as a liar basically on day 2. And then she might go back and be like, this guy's a really great liar. He persuaded me and he bamboozled me and fooled me and he got an extra vote and I lost my vote. And so I hate this person. Like, and then if you give it up like he did here, you lose your vote. So it's sort of like a lose-lose. The best place to be would be getting the torch card. So no matter the outcome, you say, I told you the truth. I wasn't lying with you. Maybe we can have an alliance in the future. Even if the person picks incorrectly and picks skull, you can still say, sorry, I wasn't that good at telling the truth, but we can still work together. I've never lied to you. Compared to Jelinski here, would be lying straight to people's faces. And you might be pissed off by that.
yeah, I feel like Maria also did really well here with her whole like bluff of, if you are lying to me, I'm gonna tell everyone back on my tribe and you'll never be able to make an alliance with them. Like, I feel like Jelinski shouldn't have fallen for that, but he did, and I think it was a good move for her to make sure she was really picking the right person.
I liked her threat, and then Jelinski talks about the poker, you have to fold your cards. I feel like for him here, it's fine to fold because you don't really know Maria. You don't know if her threat is true or not. Like, if you lie to her and she truly is pissed off and gets 6 people to be pissed off at you, you might be in a little bit of a bad spot at merge. So I do feel like it makes sense to make 2 people happy by giving them extra votes here. But like we said at the top of this podcast, I think his phrasing of when he went back to camp and told everyone else what happened was just so bad. Like, you're basically telling all of your tribe mates, hey, I'm a selfish player. I'm thinking about myself and I am creating cross-tribal friendships already. Like they were saying, why do we care that, like, why would you give it up? Why do we care that she threatened you? Why do you care about these random people? That's not helping us as a tribe. Like, he should have just made up some other lie here, I think.
The thing is, he doesn't even have to lie that much. He can just be like, I got the skull card. Maria was able to pick out that I had the skull
Mhm.
card, and so I lost my vote. Like, that's literally all you had to say. Like, I don't know what he thought he was going to gain by telling his tribe the truth. Because it's like you basically were just like, oh yeah, I threw away my vote to give two other people votes. And like later on, someone is like, how does this help us to give two other people
Exactly.
extra votes? And Jelinski couldn't really give them an answer. So
Like, keep that thought process, keep the selfish thought process to yourself. Just say you lost the game. Not that you quit again and you folded, but you just lost. Like,
yeah.
you don't need all this extra explanation. So Jelinski loses his vote here and then sort of strike two against him at this point in time.
Yeah. And oh, Jelinski. We're about to talk about his strike three.
Oh, so we get to the immunity challenge. They're chit chatting on the mats. Jelinski says several means seven.
I did not care that much about this whole conversation. Like everyone is memeing it, and I'm kind of just like, does it matter? Like you're told, like it's not like they were told, oh, you have several hours, and then after 4 hours, they were like physically hauled away by Survivor producers that from the challenge. It was like they were told you will have several hours, and I assumed they could ask follow up like how many hours is that. So the whole argument of like we should have had more time. It's like Jelinski, who's to say you wouldn't have just quit still, regardless?
I think the memes online are so funny. Now, whenever anyone on Reddit talks about time, they do it in increments of several. So if several means seven, they're like, oh, they had, if they're talking about 8 hours, it's several plus 1 hour. So it's just so funny. I Googled, for me, several, I would think is more than two. Google also says it is more than two, but not many. So a couple is two. Several, I would say, is like 3 to 7, maybe. 3 to 4. I don't know. You're getting a little bit too up there with seven. And then saying several, seven is in the name of it, so it means several. That was whack.
Yeah, apparently someone looked at the Google analytic trends for people Googling the definition of several, and it spiked on Wednesday evening when Jelinski was saying, like, several means seven. So he had a noticeable effect on Google Analytics, apparently.
I'm just gonna say that now as a meme joke to people, and then if they don't watch Survivor, I think it'll just be extra funny because they'll give you that like, "Are you okay?" look when you say several means seven.
I mean, I did that with Applebee's all the time. Whenever people like mention Applebee's in casual conversation, I'm like, oh, that's my favorite sit down restaurant. And people like who don't watch Survivor, and honestly, some people who do watch Survivor, like just don't get it because they don't realize that I'm referencing something.
Oh my god, we should go to Applebee's, our favorite sit-down restaurant, for several hours.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean basically a full workday, 7.
I don't have 7 hours to sit at an Applebee's. I feel like we would also piss off whatever waiter ended up waiting our table. They'd be like, why are you still here?
Yeah, it's like those TikTok bits that people do and they, like, post their bits. This is our new bit. Several means 7, and just say it in, like, common conversations. But for this immunity challenge, you have to race to the top of this ramp, get the 500-pound gecko, get it through obstacles, and solve a puzzle at the end. The gecko was so cute. I'm like, I want one in, like, stuffed animal form. They were so adorable.
I thought it was so funny because Jeff is describing this gecko and he's like, they're bloodshot eyes. And I'm like, Jeff, it's not that deep. It's really not that deep.
I thought people might get crushed by it on, like, the little frame portion. I was like, people gotta be careful because someone's gonna get crushed by a 200-pound leg of the gecko falling on them and get hurt. Dangerous.
Yeah. Luckily, it didn't seem like anybody got hurt. So I guess they must have been being really careful.
Yeah, poor geckos getting flung around on this challenge. And then the puzzle portion, Orange wins first place in the puzzle. They also had a big lead here because they quit the sweat portion of the challenge. You might argue, hey, because we quit, like we could have more energy for the immunity challenge. Didn't really help them. Purple was last going into the puzzle portion and ended up losing the challenge.
Yeah, and again, I feel like the puzzle was Jelinski's third strike because, like, yeah, they started behind, but also the man did not know like what to do. Like his tribe mates were trying to tell him, like, "Oh, this is the piece you need to be in." He was like, you know that SpongeBob meme where Patrick is trying to find the lid of the jar,
Mm.
and he's like pointing at everything other than the lid of the jar. I feel like that was Jelinski with the puzzle pieces. People are like, the puzzle piece, that puzzle piece by your right hand, and he kept being like, what, and I feel like they probably weren't doing well anyways, just because we talked about, sleep deprivation. But it's, yeah, they really did not do well, and I feel like Jelinski, maybe he could have improved his standing if he had done well on this puzzle, but it definitely did not help him.
It's wild though that like why would you be stacking the pieces on top of each other? How is that helpful for Jess who is also on the puzzle with you? Cuz if you're stacking them like vertically up, she can't see what those pieces are. Like you're covering them all.
Yeah, I thought when Jeff said, like, "Oh, Jelinski is stacking them," I thought it was like, "Oh, we've already figured out where they're going. I'm stacking them. You can take off the
Mm.
top piece, and we'll automatically know where it goes." But no, he was just moving the puzzle pieces around. Very questionable, very confusing. Again, like you said, I don't understand the strategy of that.
No, I thought that too when Jeff said it. I was like, "Okay, cool." They're like thinking 3 steps ahead. Just pick up the piece and it's the next one you need. Like he visualized it or he's like Carson and he knew the puzzle so he knew what goes where. But yeah, no, if you're I feel like kindergarten, elementary school, to start a puzzle, you sort out all of the pieces flat so you can look at them all.
Yeah, yeah, it was a yeah.
So we get to the purple team. They lose the immunity challenge. Kenzie on this tribe is very, very popular. Good for her. I think we would think this based off of first impressions, based off of her preseason stuff. She seems very fun, friendly, bubbly personality. Like I want to be friends with her.
Yeah, that was fun.
So, Jess having some troubles on this tribe. She's having issues with not sleeping, her ADHD. She keeps on losing things. And Alyssa sort of mentioned this earlier, but yeah, this definitely sucks for her. Probably not her expectation of going out onto Survivor that this would happen. Hopefully, she can figure it out and get into a Survivor rhythm here. But I low key thought maybe she could quit this episode, or hopefully she does not quit in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it must be really hard because ADHD, if you've been medicated for ADHD your whole life and then suddenly you're not anymore, like that is a
Mm.
major change to your brain chemistry. And again, I feel like we've talked about this a couple of times, but I wonder like if she tapered her ADHD medication correctly, like what is going on?
Is
So,
that not something you can continue on the island?
from my understanding, the only medications that they're allowed to continue on the island are like if women have birth control, but I am not entirely sure.
Yeah, because that seems sort of whack to not be able to do like an ADHD or like anxiety meds or something like that, that people might have been on since they were in like high school after getting diagnosed. And then you're in your like 20s, 30s, or 40s and have to get off of it. It for the show seems hard.
Yeah, and I think they probably also wouldn't let her have it because people could argue that because most ADHD medications are stimulants, like it would give her an advantage because like other people aren't sleeping and then she's getting a stimulant. Like people would make all sorts of arguments about why it would be unfair for her to continue her ADHD medication. So I'm assuming she probably isn't on it while on the island. So,
which is also interesting because it is probably statistically like someone else on Survivor previously probably has had ADHD and gone on there, but this is like one of the first times I guess we're hearing about this specifically being an issue for her here.
yeah.
But we see Tiffany, she finds the Beware advantage. She tells Kenzie, so Kenzie knows about it. Q also knows about it. Good for Tiffany. I feel like Tiffany had a very good first episode. They have to dig below the spot she found it. She gets a clue, but it doesn't really do anything until your tribe loses immunity, and you lose your vote until that happens. So it's a win-win here. They lost immunity, and then she gets her vote back because she's able to crack the code puzzle, get the key, and now she has an idol and her vote back.
I feel like I didn't really like this Beware advantage as much as I like some of the other ones because it never really felt like there were stakes. Like the whole thing of like, oh, you lose your vote until your tribe loses immunity. Like, you're not going to need a vote if your tribe keeps winning immunity. Like, that kind of confused me. And then also, it felt like her Beware advantage was easier than the other ones because it didn't really involve any sort of element of sneaking. Like, sure, she had to like be away from other people while she was solving the puzzle, but it wasn't like what we've seen in past seasons where like, oh, someone had to hold up the piece of paper to their tribe flag in order. Like, it felt like very different levels of difficulty. And so I'm kind of like, how are they calibrating the level of difficulty here?
I guess it'll be interesting to see for the other two tribes if they're similar to Tiffany's one here, where, okay, you have to get a clue, do a puzzle, dig some, or if it's like weird, oh, you have to say a phrase, or you have to go do the birdcage idol or something like that. But I also agree it makes a little bit less sense because you don't need a vote, like you're saying, until you lose immunity. So unless you can't find the clues and do the puzzle, you should get your vote back and never lose your vote, which is fine because I feel like I don't like people losing their vote on a 6-person tribe. So I'm fine with them getting their vote back, but there's no stakes here. So maybe that's good. It's a regular idol after you have to jump through some hoops.
Yeah, but I would rather have it just be a regular idol rather than having all these hoops just because like I just didn't feel like a Beware advantage. So the other thing I noticed about this idol is that it looks like it would be an idol that would be really easy to fake because it's literally just a string of beads. I was like, is this on purpose? What's going on here?
It looks like the beads on their torches or tribe flag. I feel like Kenzie made a necklace out of beads they got on the island. So I agree. Maybe if that's probably what they want, like, hey, show your idol to other people. And then they're like, yeah, it's just a string of beads. I can go cut that off of the flag. And then people might do fake idols.
Yeah. So I think that'll be interesting to see going forward, whether or not this specific style of idol is easier to fake and if that was intentional.
At least as of right now, there's no fake idols that people think are real idols. So maybe this is a good thing. You don't lose your vote. You just got to do some stuff and you've got your idol back. If Jeff wants to make them do these weird things, sure. But maybe we're going back towards more regular idols, no losing their vote, which is good, I think.
Yeah, but again, just make that a regular idol then instead of like creating fake stakes that will immediately be resolved.
Maybe someone won't be able to find the idol and then they will lose their vote. Sort of hope that happens. Otherwise, I agree. There's no point to lose your vote because once your tribe loses immunity, just find the idol and then you're good. So I thought this entire episode was funny because as Jelinski is making his mistakes, we see that Q becomes a professional hater of Jelinski, and Q is very staunch in this hate. And I was like, great, Q, you're so awesome. You're a professional hater and you're sticking to it. I love
the
it.
conversation they had at Final Tribal Council, I was rolling. But I feel like the fact that Q was so anti-Jelinski was kind of why I was like, there's no way they're going to keep Jelinski over Jess just because I feel like no one, morale wise, like it was better to get rid of Jelinski than it was to get rid of Jess.
I would be interested to learn more about how how Q was able to convince Kenzie and Tiffany to vote Jelinski out over Jess, because it did seem like those two women wanted to make the tribe stronger, saying Jelinski's tall, he's athletic, we should keep him around. How did Q convince them? Did he just say, okay, he's tall and he's strong, but he keeps quitting. Maybe he's not as much of a help. He did worse in the puzzle than Jess. So we do need puzzle people. Keep Jess around. Or was he just a super professional hater and just stuck his foot down and was like, we are doing this. Please listen.
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting is contestants in the past have said that they basically float every name at every tribal, and then it's up to the editors to make like make the story make sense. And so I feel like it's one of those things where they probably talked about voting everyone out at some point, and it was just they showed us that originally they were on Jess so that it wouldn't be immediate, like, oh, it's going to be Jelinski.
That's true. On a 6-person tribe, everyone's name might come up. Unless you're Kenzie and super popular, maybe everyone else's name got floated a little bit. Banu seemed to have some trouble in general at the end here with like having a lot of feelings, feeling bad about voting someone out. So I think that would be interesting to keep an eye on going into the future. Like, is this something that might cause problems for him in the next coming votes?
I mean, if you saw the preview for the next episode, I would feel like it's not a stretch to say that maybe Banu being emotional is going to come up again. So,
oof, yeah, that challenge preview. Oh no.
yeah.
I'm hoping Jess could be like Emily from last season. I feel like Jess low-key could be more dangerous if she is able to figure out her sleeping and mental health and she gets some footing in the game. I feel like she is intelligent. She knows the game well. She could try to make things happen. Compared to Jelinski, might be trying to make things happen, but might not have like the social capital to make things happen. Jess, if she can figure out that footing, I think could be dangerous in the future.
Yeah, maybe she just has to hope that she just gets so physically exhausted that her body is forced to sleep, and that'll help her.
True. So Jelinski's voted out. Sucks. Like Jeff said, not everyone can win the game.
Yeah, you forgot the best part, which is Q being a professional hater at Final Tribal, or not Final Tribal, at Tribal Council, when Jelinski's like, I don't give up. And then Q's like, but you did give up. And Jelinski was like, yeah, I did. Like, I just thought that whole exchange was so funny because Jelinski even gave up on like pretending not to give up. Like, you could not write a more perfect script.
He's just folding at every turn. And maybe I do wonder if does he play poker like that?
I would love to play poker with this man because he apparently is a bad liar. So
Folds at every sign of negative things happening. So, yeah, overall, I thought it was a fine, fun Survivor premiere episode. Next week is also 2 hours long, so another long boy up in queue for us. I'm excited to see what happens next week, although I feel like Purple's probably maybe losing again just because they sort of sucked a lot this week in the challenges.
maybe Purple pulls it out. And if not, then I'm excited to see them be the sucky tribe this season.
Yeah, if Purple loses, I feel like Jess and Banu are probably on the chopping block.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So, yeah, let us know in the comments what you thought of the premiere episode. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Are you, like Q, a professional hater of Jelinski and Jelinski's quitting this episode? Do you, like Jelinski, think that several means 7, or do you think it means like more than 2? So, like 3 to 5 would make more sense there. Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you all next time.